Hey, what's up gamers? And I know it's been a while since I've done a new video, but with the new Mortal Kombat X soon to release, pretty soon actually, for the PlayStation 3, 360, and even the newer consoles, Xbox One and PS4, that is. I'm reluctant to talk about the newer Mortal Kombat games, which I felt I've been overdue for quite a while to do, since I've talked about the original ones for Super Nintendo / Sega Genesis, based off the original arcade games. I figured I'll start my way up from Mortal Kombat 4, which is the, 3D, three-dimensional games, and pretty much work my way up. I've already talked about, obviously, the 2011 game Mortal Kombat, or Mortal Kombat 9, or New Mortal Kombat, whatever the hell you call it, or I would call it. And it's a great game, we all know that, and as well as Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe. And of course, I already mentioned Shaolin Monks, so I don't feel the need to really get into those games, even though I might mention them over the course of this multi-game review. So, yeah, might as well start my way up with Mortal Kombat 4. This one is the first of its kind to, even though it's the last one to be actually numbered, it is the first of its kind to explore the three-dimensional graphics. Obviously, this was also for the N64, and there was also a gold edition with extra characters for the Sega Dreamcast, but obviously I don't have those versions, I only have this one. For its time, it seemed pretty impressive, but it, of course, reduced itself down to only 2 fatalities per character, and, of course, it basically brought some new characters in, which didn't seem as interesting now. Obviously, it brought Meat in for the first time, and, some of the fatalities and graphics and ideas may have seemed cool at the time, but just look at it. I ain't got much to say, and I ain't gonna talk about this one too much. Yeah, there's pit fatalities, only 2 of them to be exact, of course. But may seemed interesting back then when it first came out, but I ain't got much to say. Graphics and gameplay is playable for what it's worth, and depending on which port you play, this one is said to be the superior port, and I thought it's pretty decent. Not much to say there. Graphics may have, well, not aged well enough, but that's all I can say about that. The shortest, quickest review on this whole collection, not much to say. I give it just a plain 2 air modes up on this one. So, well, I think it could only get better from that point on, and may I say it does with Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, but not quite there yet. For one thing, look at the graphics. Yeah, they're way more fluent this time around. There was also a Game Boy Advance port, but it's way different and definitely inferior despite the 3D graphics, but this is where it's all at. There's also on GameCube and Xbox, but this is the PlayStation 2 version. You can pick it up, it's definitely worth it. May not be as good as the next set of Mortal Kombat 3D games, but it's definitely worth checking out. For one thing, it has a whole line of new characters as well as returning ones. You got the classic characters, and of course you got newer characters, and of course the newer boss fight, but boss fights at the end especially are lacking, and the basic arcade mode does seem to go on a little bit, and damn, does it get hard. Yeah, I ain't kidding. There's also what they call a conquest mode, but it's really nothing else than just learning different fighting moves with each character, and they do get frustrating having to learn these different combo moves. My god, it's trial and error right here. That's all you're doing, learning fighting moves, doing them, and then fighting your opponent or whatever player that you face to complete each player's conquest. Not much to say there. Pretty good game, actually. But there's no pit fatalities, of course, and only 1 fatality per character. Really? That's it? And yeah, so that's it. You try to do a pit fatality anywhere, it looks like it teases you, but no. All there is just you're going to hit a boundary. That's it. But of course each character does get a weapon you can pull out, which is pretty cool. So, I'd say this game is great, but it's just getting there. My final verdict? I give it a plain weird mode up and a rockin' weird mode up with Wii Motion Plus. It's getting there. So, yeah, obviously it can only get better with this game. This is the one I consider the best. The Supreme Mortal Kombat 3D game. On PlayStation 2, and just like the previous one, Deadly Alliance, also on GameCube and Xbox. So, how great can it get? Well, let's just say the graphics are a lot better. 2 fatalities per character, not to mention harakiri. What is it, may you ask? Well, it's basically the Japanese, or I think Chinese term for suicide, and that's what it is. Character commits suicide. Usually it happens when I'm facing the computer or whatever. I can never figure out how to do it, myself when I'm dead. Obviously that's not my main objective to die, but it's still pretty cool to watch them kill themselves, saying, oh, you killed me, let me take myself out of my misery. The fatalities themselves are awesome. My favorites have to be Barakas, Sub-Zeros, and yeah, obviously I did a list already, so it should be no surprise that there's a lot of cool ones on here, as well as pit fatalities. This is the first game in this whole series that pit fatalities, at least that I can remember, that you don't have to wait till it says finish him. You could just knock them off. You can wait till it says finish him, it's an option, but there's a lot of great pit fatalities. And you've probably seen my favorites in this one. You got the fallen cliffs, you got the gold mine thing, and you can knock them right in. You got, of course, the lava, you got the... Oh my god, there's so many awesome ones in this. It's just superb. You got the laser beams, the big tower where you can knock them off, they go falling, and then splat onto the ground. Sweet. And of course, you got a conquest mode returning. And I will say it is definitely better than Deadly Alliances, being that you can actually explore and walk around. Camera angling can be a little iffy and tough to get used to, but it's pretty decent, but it's not much of a conquest, being that your only main objective is basically going around learning different combos and moves and such, and you're playing as Shujinko at a young age, and you get older and older, and there is actually a story to it, compared to the Deadly Alliances version of Conquest, but that's the main objective. Yeah, you can go around and do favors for people, like find engagement rings that a guy pawned to earn money or something, and all this crap, and there are secrets that you can unlock to unlocking different characters, arenas, costumes, and such, but it's actually an improvement, but it's just, like I said, just getting there. There is also the chess mode, which is a really cool addition, and once again, you got pit fatalities. If you choose the right pit, you got this classic acid pool, spikes, and so forth. There's so much to offer. And with when you finally take out, instead of calling it the king, they call it the leader. And there's different sneaky moves and stuff you can do on the board. And basically, when you come across, a fight for space, and you take the leader, which is, of course, as I said, the king, you can... The fatality automatically, depending on which character you are, automatically gets done. Yeah, the unique fatality, and that's what's great about this. You don't have to put in the button combo to do that. The button combos can be a little tricky, and you got the weapons and different stances and stuff that you have to, you can use on your opponents. There's a lot of cool, neat unlockables and such, and also the Tetris mode, which I think a lot of people complain is childish looking, but I think it's pretty amusing. And once again, you got pit fatalities depending on which arena you're in. But once again, just like the chess mode, it automatically gets done for you. And I think the silliest part of this is once you actually complete it, just listen to the music. Okay, if you didn't get a single chuckle out of that, then I don't know what's wrong with you. But once again, I consider it really amusing. And I consider this game overall the best Mortal Kombat game, at least one of the best Mortal Kombat games ever made. It definitely exceeded all expectations, and I could still consider it great. So, yeah. My final verdict on that one, well, I don't have the Wii mode in this one, but I give it I give it 2 Rockin' Weird modes with Wii Motion Pluses up. It's that good. So, can it get better from that point on? Well, let's take a look at Mortal Kombat Armageddon. In some ways, it does make the big leap forward, being that, well, it was said to be the last Mortal Kombat game made by Midway. It really was, being that it's not a crossover game. The last one actually made by Midway was Mortal Kombat vs. DC, which I already reviewed, but obviously that's the inferior Mortal Kombat game compared to these. Obviously, this one does bring, I guess they wanted to play it safe in case it was the last Mortal Kombat game made by Midway. They brought, I'm not kidding, every single Mortal Kombat character in from start to finish. I mean, just look at the list. Look at the roster right there. Yes, they brought every single one. So that would have been awesome, right? Being all those fatalities that they would have done? Yeah. No, of course not. They chose, instead of putting all individual fatalities, they took them all away. Yeah, they brought in a lot of pit fatalities in this one. They brought a lot of stage fatalities, like they brought in one room with, you have to choose, depending on if you can make it over there, you know, to get your opponent's ass over there, to knock them into either acid, or lava, or the spikes, or the grinders. And, yeah, you got the Rock Crusher, which kind of reminds me of the Rock Crusher thing on Temple of Doom with the conveyor belts. Oh, you got a lot of pit fatalities in this one. It's no joke. The subway is one of the best subway fatalities out of all the subway fatalities that I've seen on any Mortal Kombat game. This is the best one, because it's graphic, it's gruesome, it's awesome. I've already mentioned it in my top list of fatalities. But, yeah, the individual fatalities, gone for the first time. I cannot believe it. Instead, you've probably seen my instructional video on the Wii version. Yes, there's also a version of this on Nintendo Wii with controls that can be a little iffy, you know, if you're using the motion controls. You also do have the option of using the classic controller and the GameCube controller if you feel sticking to that one works better. But not to get too carried away, yeah, that's all you get for regular fatalities, each character. You have to do what's called a Create a Fatality feature. And that's basically chain fatalities, and it's tough to explain. You have to basically start by ripping arms off, ripping hearts out, and punching, kicking, and so forth. You have to do it in a chain, you know how to do it right, and slice their arms off and slice their head, but usually you have to finish it by taking their head or torso or something off. And it's under a timer, which gets more and more constrained as you do more and more of them. And you can draw a weapon if you know how to do it right, and slice their arms off and slice their head, but usually you have to finish it by taking their head or torso or something off. Very tough to explain, but can be tricky, but honestly, this is probably the major flaw of the game, being that it lacks character personality, and anybody, I'm sure, can complain about that. I guess they figured, yeah, you're going to bring every character back. There's no room for individual fatalities, like Sub-Zero freezing somebody and ripping their head off, or Baraka using his claws, you know, come out of his arm, or Scorpion using his spear throw. Yeah. Obviously, there's big characters you can play as, like, of course, they did bring in Blaze, which has been said to be seen in the background of Mortal Kombat 2. But, yeah, this is the first time you actually see him, and you can play as him. And let me tell you, he can be tough. I didn't mention in Mortal Kombat Deception, the newest character they brought in is, of course, Onaga, who is, of course, said to be the Dragon King, and boy, is he cheap as shit. And just like in this game, Blaze is pretty much his, like, replacement of, you know, final boss. And he could be just as cheap as ever, just like Shao Kahn is pretty much cheap as ever in Mortal Kombat, or pretty much any Mortal Kombat game, but when he's brought into this game and you have to fight him, he's not the last guy, surprisingly. But yeah, pretty much, I guess they figured every Mortal Kombat final boss has to be as cheap shit as ever. I mean, that just seems to be a very, that just seems to be an ongoing thing right here for Midway, or whatever companies making Mortal Kombat now, Warner Brothers. But yeah, that's just how it is now. But if you can overlook that, yeah, the arcade mode is still pretty fun. And it, well, actually, Deception was the first to bring online mode in, and this pretty much continued it. Well, obviously it's PlayStation 2, so I'm pretty sure the online is probably shut down. If you want to play a Mortal Kombat game online, well, obviously you got to play Mortal Kombat 2011. And of course, I'm sure Mortal Kombat X won't disappoint. I'm sure that's going to have online mode, multiplayer, and of course they brought Conquest mode in, which I have to say, is a lot better. It's far superior over these two games. Yeah, like I said, it's getting better, and wow, it really is. It's impressive. Obviously you play as one character, and of course, yeah, you do learn fighting moves and such, but you're actually doing mission objectives, and the main objective is to move along in the Conquest mode, not just learning different moves and annoying long combo moves and such. Yeah, you're actually on a regular Conquest. You know, it's almost as good as Shaolin Monks. Shaolin Monks does suffer bad camera controls, as I said before in that review. But, and I always wondered why they never made too many more Mortal Kombat games with, you know, that kind of adventure mode. Obviously, it's not the main, like, idea of this game. It's not the main game in this one like Shaolin Monks is. But it's still really good. It's probably one of the best ones I've seen in a long time. And of course, you also have create a character, which is a cool, interesting feature, of course, but you have to unlock different things like clothes and different heads and body parts and such. And of course, it takes coins to unlock, which, you know, some of them can cost a lot, and you can give them a character bio and a lot of great mixtures and such. A lot of people created like Ghost Rider. I'm sure it's very easy to create like the Flaming Skull head and create like mixture between Sub-Zero and Scorpion and so forth, different sizes and so forth. And yeah, the newest feature, of course, they brought in go-kart racing, or motor combat as this game calls it, which is basically just an inferior port of Mario Kart. Yeah, after playing this for like maybe a minute or so, you get bored so fast. You do different moves depending on which character you're playing as, pick up different items. Honestly, as I said, it's an inferior port of Mario Kart. After playing this for a minute or so, it just makes you want to go back to playing Mario Kart. It's not as bad as Sonic R, but it's just boring and pointless. I don't know why they chose to really go down this level, or I should say down this track. Pun intended right there. But overall, I'd say this game is great. It's very enjoyable for the pit fatalities, but it definitely takes a step backwards in comparison to this game, being that it lacks the individual fatalities and, of course, therefore lacks character personality, with not being able to do so. Fun game, but if I were to recommend the best Mortal Kombat game on PlayStation 2, best, you know, 3D Mortal Kombat game per se, I would recommend this one. And of course, I'd also recommend this one, even though it's not actually a, you know, 3D Mortal Kombat game. It's just basically going back to old school style, as I mentioned in that review, just with 3D graphics. So, my final verdict on Mortal Kombat Armageddon, yeah, I give it a rockin' weird mode up with VMotion Plus and a just plain weird mode up. Step backwards, but it does its job. So, that's my review on the 3D Mortal Kombat games. Let's hope for the best out of Mortal Kombat X. I heard it's going to be great. I did hear there's going to be some background interactive stuff, and like in Injustice God Among Us, being that it's made by the same company, and that's probably where they got the idea from for that game from Mortal Kombat. And I did hear there's going to be at least 4 new characters brought in, and also if you pre-order from GameStop ahead of time, you get play as Goro for free. Yeah, pretty sweet. A DLC character for free, no free of charge. Pre-order it, man. As Shao Kahn is going to say, it would be excellent. Superb. So, till next time, happy gaming.